Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Nitya Roundup, March 2021 edition. Thank you for joining in large number. So we'll be covering the updates of last 2 months indeed, because the last roundup we had in January, and in February, because the budget came, we converted our roundup into a budget webinar. So in today's webinar, we'll be covering the key changes as we are in the month of March, which is end of financial year. We'll be telling our take on key year-end to-dos, which you must keep in mind. Some of very important rulings have come up in last couple of months. We'll be giving our take on that, and we'll end our webinar with live Q&A. Today I'm joined by my colleague Parul, who will be running us through changes and year-end to-dos. Over to you, Parul.
Thank you, Puneet. Good morning, everyone. Starting with the first segment of our today's webinar, which is regarding the key changes. So as you all are aware of the dynamic QR codes, so the government along with e-invoicing launched the dynamic QR codes that have to be printed on the tax invoices, and it is applicable from 1st of April for all the taxpayers having aggregate turnover more than 500 crores on the invoices pertaining to B2C supplies. So there were doubts regarding what should be the contents that should form the QR code. So recently, department introduced a circular wherein they discussed about the contents of the QR code. So as per the circular, they said the QR code should be formed basis your supplier GSTN, supplier UPI ID, pays bank account IFC code, invoice number, invoice date, invoice value, and then breakup of GST amount. So we must keep in mind that this is a circular, no corresponding changes have been made in the rules. So if some details are unnecessary, not required for the QR codes, because the basic objective of introduction of these dynamic QR codes was the promotion of digital payments. So we can skip having those details, for example, supplier GST or the breakup of GST amount. Along with that, please ensure that by 1st of April, our IT is technically equipped to form such QR codes, and yes, printing of those QR codes on the tax invoices. The second clarification was regarding a transaction wherein the payment has been made without the use of QR code. So say if I have made the payment using UPI ID or say NEFT, my phone pay whatsoever, then do I need to use these then do I need to print those QR codes on my invoices or not? And second question was regarding those suppliers who are making supplies through e-commerce operators. Then are they required to print the QR codes or not? So regarding this, the circular clarified that if the payment has been made before issuance of invoice, then the QR code is not required to be printed, provided that a cross-reference of payment has been made on such invoices. And if the payment is made after issuance of invoices, then no matter the customer is not using the dynamic QR code, you have to print such QR codes on their invoices. The last clarification is regarding the applicability on export transactions, because these transactions are again B2C supplies, but howsoever these are specifically covered for the generation of e-invoices, so the government has exempted such transactions from printing of dynamic QR codes. Now moving to the next recent changes, the first one is regarding the facility that has been enabled for correcting the invoice related mismatch errors in our past shipping bill. So this facility has been provided on payment of a late fee of ₹1,000. So we must ensure that going forward we submit the correct details just to avoid the payment of such late fee. At the same time, if there are any pending mismatches that are there regarding the shipping bills, then we must rectify it. The second is very important. Now, there were news that the MC and CBIC have signed a memorandum for the exchange of data. So recently we have seen that CBDT and CBIC entered into a memorandum wherein they exchanged the data, and consequent to that, the department issued show cause notices to the taxpayers for the differences that was lying between their 26 AS and the service tax returns. So we, as a taxpayer, we must keep in mind that we submit correct and uniform data across the different regulatory authorities. We should not submit different data, because this will unnecessarily invite the litigations, and we should definitely avoid this. The third is very important. We all have seen that the road tip scheme was introduced on January 1st, 2021, but the rates are not yet announced, and it's a sad story for the industry because it leads to commercial hardships for them. But recently, there were news that the government has almost finalized the road tip rates for almost all of the products, and we can soon expect these rates in the public domain. Next is regarding the new foreign trade policy, which is to be rolled out from April 1st, 2021. And this new FTP will be again valid for 5 years, that is your 2021 to 2026. And in this new FTP, we can expect a new scheme for service exporters, which is your DRES scheme, that is duty remission of export of service scheme. So this DRES scheme will going to replace the existing SEIS scheme, and it is expected to give incentives on a higher rate. For example, it was there in the news that there will be 7% incentives for micro and small enterprises, 5% for medium, and 4% for large. So definitely they have promised that the embedded taxes will be reimbursed, and this will definitely lead to the increase in service exports. But yes, we have to still wait for the complete policy to come in public domain. Adding to the new FTP only, yesterday only there was a news that the new FTP is focusing to give thrust to the export of R&D services. So we can definitely see the objective of government to promote research and development services, and yes, a major incentive can be expected in the new FTP coming by 1st of April 2021.
So just to add to all these export promotion schemes for either goods exporters or service exporters, and this we have been discussing in our earlier roundup editions also. This road tip scheme was made effective from 1st January, and we are in mid of March, and still there is no clarity how much will be the rates, how exporters will be pricing their goods. Similarly, as far as SEIS is concerned, both for 2019-20 and 2021, there is no clarity whether benefit will be available, and if yes, for how much. New foreign trade policy, we are just 3 weeks away, and let's hope that firstly the trade policy comes. It should not be an empty announcement like road tap that yes, we will be bringing policy effective from 1st April. So just keeping our fingers crossed, but at least last few months of experience with the government has not been very good, be it for goods exporters or service exporters. In our view, government needs to go an extra mile to encourage these sectors, whereas the government is not even doing these basic stuff as well. Yeah.
Indeed, Puneet. Yeah. So going forward, now we'll be covering the year-end to-dos. As Puneet discussed that this is March and the closure of financial year 2020 to 2021. So we have captured few key action points that you can keep in mind while closing your books of accounts, and make sure that these are checked on by 31st of March 2021. So first is regarding the cross charges. Please ensure that by 31st of March, all the cross charges regarding the common expenses are done. If any management support is rendered from head office to branch offices or vice versa. So all these expenses should be booked. Next is we must ensure that we must perform our GSTR 2L reconciliations for financial year 2020 to 2021. And if there is any extra credit that are lying in our GSTR 2A, we must avail it. And if it's a vice versa situation, like we need to reverse it, then we must reverse it in our March GSTR 3B. Now the next point is regarding the reconciliations of GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. So the second point was on the inward side while we are availing the credit. Same goes for the outward tax liability. We must perform a proper reconciliation activity for our GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B for financial year 2020 to 2021, and we should make all the requisite amendments that are required for these. Last is regarding the true up of common ITC reversals. So we must be reversing our common input tax credits on monthly basis. As per law, you can true up these reversals by subsequent year September return, right? But it's always recommended to do this activity by 31st of March to avoid any interest implications that could have been there in picture if you are throwing it up post March 2021. Now coming to some procedural action points, please ensure that we file our GSTR 9 and GSTR 9C by March 31st, because now we cannot expect any further relaxation from the government side, right? And second point is we must obtain the fresh letter of undertaking for financial year 2021 and 2022 just to avoid a hassle-free export transactions for our future. And nonetheless, we must have a proper new unique series for all our statutory documents like your invoices, debit notes, credit notes, and delivery challan. It's very important that last night only, the government has made the generation of e-invoices applicable for taxpayers having aggregate turnover between 50 crores to 100 crores. So from 1st of January, it was applicable for the taxpayers having aggregate turnover more than 100 crores. But now this threshold limit has been reduced to 50 crores April 1st onwards. So it is advisable to all the taxpayers who got covered under this threshold to make the necessary ERP related changes so that a proper JSON can be created, which is then sent to your invoice registration portal. And when the signed JSON comes back, it is printed, and you ensure a proper hassle-free business operations from April 1st, 2021 onwards. So we must make our ERP properly integrated to those schemas that are there under e-invoicing. As we discussed in the first part, that we have to print dynamic QR codes on all our B2C supplies if our turnover is exceeding rupees 500 crores in any financial year 17-18 onwards, then we must have a proper IT ERP that forms those QR codes and print those QR codes on our invoices. There is again some Aadhaar authentication that are done on GST portal, and this was made applicable. This was effective from 6th of January 2021. So we must ensure that we complete this authentication by 31st of. We can ensure, although there is no last date, but yes, just to be on time, we shouldn't wait for the last dates to come in picture. We can ensure it to be done in time. And the next is regarding the updation of IC details. So we must update our import-export code on the DGFT portal. Even if there is no change in the IC details, then also we must update the same. Otherwise, this will the department will deactivate the IC code, and then when we will update the same, it will be reactivated. So we must not go for that. We must update it in time. That is by June 30, 2021. We must update the IC details. Lastly, we must file our pending SEIS claims for financial year 17-18 by 31st of March 2021 with a late cutoff 10%. So with this, I request Puneet to take the webinar forward.
Thank you, Parul, for comprehensively covering the changes in year-end to-dos. So she has given a lot of work to you. Moving ahead on the rulings, so there are some important rulings have come in last few weeks. We'll start discussing one by one. The first issue is relating to rectification of bill of entry. So this is a Bombay High Court ruling. In this case, the taxpayer was importing goods under HSN 85176930, but he declared an incorrect HSN on the bills of entry. So we have an age-old dispute under customs that for every refund claim which has to be taken, is challenge of bill of entry necessary or not? And even the matters have gone to the Supreme Court and High Courts have taken contrary view. So this is an important ruling on this point. So the High Court held that Section 17 of the Customs Act casts duty on officer to verify or examine self-assessment. So it is incumbent on the officer to see whether the self-assessment is correct or not. He has a power to reassess. Section 154 permits correction of clerical or arithmetical mistake, which was the case here. Very importantly, the High Court held that there is no need of filing an appeal when power to correct inadvertent errors has been available with the authorities, and therefore the refund is available. So it's an important ruling. So even if you have paid higher duty, etc., due to mistake, etc., so non-challenge of bills of entry will not be fatal and refund will be available. Second ruling on Carotar, the Carotar regulations which came last year, we had number of webinars, and this is very relevant if you're trading, if you're taking benefits under FTA agreements, etc. So this is a Tripura High Court ruling. So in this case, the taxpayer was importing soya bean oil and claiming concessional benefit under SAFTA. The authorities sought to deny that benefit. They commenced Carotar verification without communicating any reasons to the taxpayer, nor he was given any opportunity to meet deficiency. So the taxpayer challenged this action before the High Court. The High Court directed the department to provisionally assess and release the goods basis indemnity bond of the taxpayer. So again, an important ruling, because on ground level, many of our clients are facing issues or challenges with the authorities on Carotar. So this is the first ruling on this point, and our suggestion to all of you will be that please keep your documentation, etc., ready in line with the Carotar requirements, etc. Otherwise, on a ground level, taxpayers are facing a lot of challenges on this count. Moving ahead, another important issue which has taken birth in the GST law, because GST is administered both by central and state authorities. So this is Allahabad High Court ruling. In this case, the UP GST authorities conducted survey under Section 70. Similar survey was conducted by CGST authorities as well. And many of you might be aware that even though the whole purpose of GST was that a single officer or single authority will have jurisdiction over the taxpayer for all assessments, investigations, etc., but this thing has been significantly diluted. Even CBIC has issued clarifications that both authorities can do investigations as well. So the taxpayer challenged simultaneous surveys before the Allahabad High Court. So the High Court held that the inquiry or the survey which was conducted in this case was Section 70. This is not synonymous with the word proceedings used under Section 6 of the CGST Act. So Section 6 of the CGST bars that if on a subject matter proceedings have been initiated by CGST authorities, SGST authorities cannot do, or vice versa. So they held that proceedings is different from an inquiry. The High Court interpreted that proceedings should be on same cause of action involving adjudication proceedings, mean issuance of show cause notice, etc. So they held that the inquiry is not barred, the bar is only on the proceedings, and dismiss the writ petition. technically this might be a correct ruling, but on a ground level, this is likely to create a lot of authorities. And again, many of our clients are facing the issues where on the same matter, both CGST and SGST authorities are investigating. Moving ahead, classification of hand sanitizer, which has been in significant use after COVID-19. So this is a Karnataka authority ruling. So in this case, the issue was classification of sanitizer. Should it be qualified as a medicament under Chapter 30 or as other chemical preparation under Chapter 38 or not? Because Chapter 30 medicament attracted low rate of tax of 12%. So the authority held that sanitizer is not for therapeutic use. It is not used for treatment of a disease. It does not have any prophylactic use. It is not specific to COVID-19 infection. It can be used for other purposes as well. They held that it is used for care rather than cure, and therefore it is classifiable under Chapter 38 and 18% GST is applicable. In our view, this ruling is totally incorrect, because if we see the composition of all these hand sanitizers, the drug licenses which are being taken by these manufacturers, and a lot of jurisprudence on similar disinfectants, etc., this should be correctly classifiable as a medicament with 12% GST only. Another bone of contention, this ITC distribution, cross charge, etc. So this is a Tata SIA Airlines Haryana AAR. In this case, the head office was providing maintenance services of aircrafts to the branch office. So the first issue was the recovery of charges which HO was making from BO for whatever activities it was undertaking. So the authority held that HO and BO are distinct persons. CGST Act deems supply between distinct persons even if it is without consideration, and GST is leviable. On ITC distribution, the authority held that as far as input services is concerned, ISD route is mandatory, whereas ITC on inputs can be distributed through a normal registration. So again, this issue we have been discussing in past in our roundups, etc. At first place, in our view, there is no supply between head office and branch office. So this Schedule 1 entry should not apply, because it presupposes existence of a supply at first place. Even on the second point, in our view, and as per the FAQ issued by CBIC for banking and finance sector, ISD and cross charge are optional only. Therefore, to that extent also, this ruling is incorrect. The next ruling is on notice pay recovery. So it's a Gujarat AAR in case of Amneal Pharma. So in this case, the employer was making notice pay recovery on early exit of the employee. So the authority held that notice pay is a sum mutually agreed between employer and employee for breach of contract. There's a consideration paid to employer for tolerating the act of employee leaving before time. They held that it is covered under Schedule 2 as toleration of an act. Importantly, where Schedule 2 only classifies whether a particular activity is goods or services, it does not say that this qualifies as supply at first place, and held that GST is payable. Again, in our view, this ruling is incorrect. In our view, this is more in the nature of damages, etc. And there is sufficient jurisprudence under pre-GST regime holding that such recoveries are outside the purview of tax. The next ruling, again a very important ruling, Haryana AAR ruling. So in this case, the employer was providing canteen to the employees, and the question was eligibility of ITC. So the authority held that ITC is not available. They held that the second provisor to section 17(5)(b) has to be read with clause 3 only, which deals with the travel benefit. So just to clarify that section 17.5 lists out goods and services which are not eligible for credit. The government introduced second proviso effective February 2019, which said that if any goods or services are provided due to a statutory obligation, they'll be entitled for credit. So section 17.5 structure is there are three clauses like food and beverages, etc., etc., and then there's a proviso. The food and beverages or canteen is covered under the first clause, where the proviso is towards the end. So, basis this, the authority held that ITC is not available. In our view, this ruling is incorrect for multiple reasons. One, from the plain construction of statute, when there are three clauses and at the end there's a proviso, it has to be read along with all the three only, not with the third one only. Secondly, the whole purpose of bringing this amendment, which is very evident from GST Council minutes, etc., was to allow credit on all these statutory obligations of employer, with the examples like canteen, etc., have been given. So, in our view, absolutely incorrect ruling, but yeah, is likely to raise a lot of disputes, etc., especially for manufacturing companies who avail these credits. The next ruling, again an important ruling, is when advance authorization holders, they make the exports, the refund relating to that. So in this case, the taxpayer imported duty-free goods under advance authorization, where both BCD and IGST was not paid by him. On the domestic procurement, he purchased on payment of GST. He made exports on payment of GST and wanted to claim rebate. So the issue which came up was that advance authorization notification or the foreign trade policy also gives option to the importer or the exporter that he can avail exemption only for BCD. He can pay IGST and claim ITC of that, which was done by the taxpayer in this case. So effectively, he availed exemption of BCD only. So this is what the authority held, that if the taxpayer has availed exemption of BCD but paid IGST, this means he has availed benefit under advance authorization notification. The authorities invoked Rule 9610 and held that IGST refund is not available. In our view, again, this ruling is absolutely incorrect, because Rule 9610 has a explicit explanation dealing with this situation, that if the taxpayer has paid IGST, then refund will be available, which was totally overlooked by the authority. And similar thing has been coming from the circular department circulars as well. So again, incorrect ruling by the Advanced Ruling Authority. Thank you, everyone. With this, we come to end of our webinar. Again, thank you for joining in that large number. Bye.